This video with the AnKing is some step one thoughts that I had the day after that I shared on Instagram Live, and I'm uploading here for those of you that don't have Instagram. Just as a disclaimer, these are my own opinions. It's not necessarily a guaranteed formula for success if you do the exact same things that I do. Also, anything that I discuss that is material-wise is based off of commercial question banks material, and I do not discuss any material from the step one exam that I took in order to be in compliance with the testing agreement. If you do want individualized help from our team, we do offer that on Patreon. Here's the link for that if you'd like to check it out. So with that, here's some of my thoughts.
All right. I'll give it a little bit for people to get on here. This is my first Instagram Live, so I have no idea what I'm doing, so I apologize if this doesn't work out perfect. Woo! All right. So first I want to start out just saying that this is what the USMLE says, that I have to maintain confidentiality of the materials. I can't attempt to reproduce exam materials through recording, memorization, any other means. Basically, I can't give any specific information from the test. So I'm going to avoid that. I'm not going to say anything. I'll say no comment if there's questions about that. I'm also going to, if I talk about questions at all, that'll be specifically stuff that I've done from like practice questions. And I've done uworld, the Rx, and the amboss practice questions. So let me look here and see. You guys can send in questions if you want, and I will try and answer them. But what a lot of people have asked me is, in regard, yesterday I said there's a lot of new stuff on the exam. What I meant by that is, like, if you used the original Zanki deck back from like first, I think you used first aid 2016 and 2017, you would definitely miss stuff. But I used the deck, the version 6 of the step 1 deck, and I think I had everything. The stuff that I didn't know is like in left field, right? There's just no way that you would ever know that. So that's what I meant by new stuff. I can't really say anything specifically as to like what new stuff there is. I still would agree with everybody on like the UFAPs, uworld's great. I never really opened first aid. It was more, I just did the anki flashcards. I matured most of the deck, not all of it. And then I did 60% of the uworld question bank. So, and that's because of the being canceled. So originally I was going to take 2 practice exams this week, and then I was going to take another 2 practice exams the following week. And somebody just asked me if I can post my step studying schedule breakdown and stuff. Yes, I will definitely do that. My plan is to make a YouTube video out of this, so I'll try and do that. The other question I've gotten a ton of is what it was like with the coronavirus stuff. And I've got the mask that I used. I used this. Forrest used one. It was a cloth mask like this. They're fine. I do think that this kind is better than the kind that wraps around your ears. I tried using one that wrapped around my ears to practice for the exam, and it by the end of 6 hours, it hurts. The reason I like this is because it's got the wire in it for my nose, so I could put it right here and it basically stays. And so I tied this one actually below my ears, which is not proper, but it was good enough. And I left it like this, basically. I tied this one really loosely. They actually came and asked me to tie this one a little bit tighter, but that way it allowed the airflow to push down. And so I wasn't breathing in my own air the whole test. And that was pretty good. So that's what I'd recommend for the mask, because I know it's kind of a obnoxious situation. They made you had to keep your mask on the entire time. And so if you went out, you couldn't ever access your locker, but I left my lunch just in a plastic bag on the floor, basically. There was only 4 or 5 of us in the testing center at the time. And so I would grab my lunch, and then I had to actually leave the prometric place to eat my lunch. And that's how that happened. What I did a day of, I had McDonald's for breakfast because I wanted a high-fat, high-protein meal. And then I tried not to drink too much. I did all 4 of the first blocks in a row. I took like a 5-minute break. I had between 2 to 5 minutes left on the end of each block before I ended it. And then after the 4th exam, I went and took lunch. And so I spent probably about half hour with lunch, and then after that I went back in, and then I knew that that sixth block is like the hard one. That's the really tough one. When you get to the seventh block, you're ready to be done, and it's exciting, and so that was easy. So after the fifth block, I took another 10-minute break. I went back out. I had a little, like a half a bottle of Dr. Pepper just to get a little caffeine in me, and then went back in, did the sixth block, went right into the seventh and finished. I felt pretty good about that. Let me look at some of these questions you guys have sent in and see. Some of you asking if you can watch this as a video later. I'm going to save it. I'll probably upload it to YouTube as well. Another question is, would I recommend a second round of uworld or amboss? Let me just talk about the question banks in general. I felt like the RX question bank is just, it's almost like the boards and beyond questions kind of in a sense that they just help reinforce, like, did you get the material? Did you actually learn the flashcards? Are you okay with it? But they don't actually test that like second or third reasoning nearly as well. So the amboss question bank, I think, is by far in a way the best one for teaching you how to take a test. I love their highlight feature or the attending tip. I think those are absolutely key when you're learning how to take questions. If I could say, like, there's one key to success on this test, it's if you can highlight the correct things. If you can highlight the right 3 or 4 things, you will get that question right every time. And so that's what I really liked about amboss. uworld was more to show you what the test is actually like. I felt like it felt a lot more like that, whereas amboss is a little more skewed, but I actually think that's good, especially if you're shooting for a higher score, because you need to see different questions. You're gonna get stuff that's like I said, out in left park, and you've got to teach yourself how to rule things out and how to rule things in based off of that, even when you don't know the answers to stuff. One thing I'm seeing like 10 plus questions from everybody here. The exam is between NBME tests and the uworld tests. I think the exam is in the middle of the two, but leaning a little bit closer to uworld. It felt a little more like uworld. I don't feel like the wicked questions on the NBME exams were represented in the actual test. Then again, I could be totally wrong. Who knows what my score actually is? But that's kind of how I felt in terms of what they were. It was close to uworld 2. When I submitted each block on uworld 2, it was like, oh, I don't know if I'm totally ready to submit this block, but I feel reasonably okay on it. And that's how I felt on this test. I could usually narrow it down. I marked about the same number I was marking on uworld. And then what I do is I go through and tally at the end. So if I was like a 50-50 on it, I would give it a half tally. If I looked at it and like had no idea, I'd give it a full tally, and I'd count how many tallies I had. And I tried to shoot for like 5 on each block, so that I was like, okay, I'm gonna like definitely miss 5 questions on this block, plus maybe some others or something. That was kind of my goal. That's kind of how I felt. A lot of you are asking what I did. So I don't know if I'm actually going to share my scores on anything. I haven't decided on that yet. We may like do an average of all of us or something, but because so many people know who I am, yeah. So I'm not going to share the actual scores. But I will tell you what my scores were in relation to what my goal score was. So I took NBME 23 on January 25th, and that was about 15-20 points below my goal score. That was my baseline. And then February 13th, so about 3 weeks after that, I was about to my goal range. That was NBME 20. Then I took the amboss test. That was a little below my goal range, although I felt like it was a really good test. I still think that. Then I took NBME 18 on March 20th. I hit my goal range. Then I took uworld 1 on April 7th. I was shooting to shoot that a month before because it supposedly over predicts. And so you take it about 4 weeks before you're going to take the actual test. And so so I took that one, what would have been a month before my actual test ended up being about 3 weeks. And it did over predict every other exam I've ever taken. Then I took NBME 21, same thing, I hit my goal range. And then this week I took, okay, sorry. So I took uworld 2 this week. I hit my goal range, and so I decided to take it. And then I did the free 120. So I found out on Monday, I was supposed to take this May 9th, next Saturday. I found out on Monday my exam was canceled. And then about 7 o'clock, our academic administrator emailed Forrest and I and said, hey, there's a spot open on Friday, which was kind of a panic. That's like 3 days later. I only got 60% of the way through uworld. And so I was like, well, I'd rather do that than take it in 3 months, even if it means like 5 or 10 points lower on the exam. So he said, all right, take uworld 2 the next day. If you feel comfortable, go for it. So I took uworld 2. I hit my goal range. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and take it. Then I took free 120 on Wednesday. On Thursday, Forrest and I Zoomed with each other and just chatted about we'd written a list of things that were like last minute review, and we were going to go through those next week, but we decided to go through that on Thursday. Probably spent like an hour or two total studying, and then just relaxed the rest of the day. I would definitely recommend that. Relax the day before. It's good to go into this feeling comfortable. And then I got up and took the exam at 8 a.m. That was kind of wild. All right, let me look at a few more questions sent from you guys. Let's see. Someone's asking resources-wise. Definitely use the Zanki deck. And if I could only recommend, especially with this going past fail, amboss and uworld would be the 2 question banks to do, hands down. And there's so many other perks with amboss that it's worth the purchase. And then what would I have done differently at the start of MS2? That's a good question, and I've been trying to make like a Reddit post on this and think about it. There's a lot of things I'd do differently. One of them is do less flashcards and more practice questions. I feel like there was so many, like everything on the actual exam was phrased differently or whatever. Like you can't just memorize the buzzwords. It's going to be phrased similarly, but you just have to understand it. If you don't understand the cards, you're not going to get it. Plus, like, there's a lot of details in the extra sections of the flashcards. You definitely need to go through all of those. This is a good question that just came in. Do I recommend creating your own flashcards? That was another thing I would do differently is I was just screenshotting things into the missed questions portion of my cards and then restarting them. And I felt like that was really good throughout MS2, but maybe like 1 or 2 months before the actual exam, I would start making your own flashcards. As soon as Dedicated started, I started making flashcards based on my missed questions. I wish I'd started that a little bit earlier because the ones I made flashcards on, I knew really well. And I felt more comfortable with it because I just needed to phrase it in a different way. Like I didn't learn it originally. There's more of you asking drugs and bugs being less common now and stuff like that. Step 1 actually postponed the changes to change the drugs, or it's actually just the drugs, not the bugs. And then they were going to add more of like the situational questions. So they postponed that, I think, till June 1st or something. So I actually did not have that change on my test. But while I'm on the topic, I realize I'm just bouncing tangent to tangent. I would strongly recommend the ethics section of amboss. It is incredible for getting those ethics questions right. And Forrest found it the day before, so we went over that on Thursday and just like went through it. And they have just like hard cases and like what the answers are. It was incredible. I wish I'd read through that whole thing before I started uworld. That's a really good resource. Amboss also has a really good learning card on saline and the different types of saline and when to use that, as well as lymphatic drainage. Yeah, all super high yield stuff that I would strongly recommend. Let's see. A lot of you guys are commenting. I don't know how to use Instagram very well, but if you send the questions, a question instead of a comment, it's a little bit easier for me to answer them. I'm going to pull up. Where's this amboss thing? All right, let's switch my camera here. So this is the amboss card here with this thing, and I think that this medical was incredible. And the other thing I loved about amboss, I didn't realize this until Dedicated, but they highlight everything in red based off questions that you've missed previously, and then they have the learning cards kind of set up so that you can see which learning cards you need to focus more on. That was super good to use when you're like towards the end and you really gotta focus, and you gotta like decide which things you need to focus on. So that was really helpful. I definitely would recommend amboss for that. And I know we've done stuff with amboss. This is totally my own opinions. Amboss has no idea I'm even talking about this right now. I just felt like they were a really good resource. A few other questions here. Let's see. How to best prepare for the new question, stuff not in Zanki. I don't even know like how, other than going through First Aid 2020, but most of the stuff, I mean, just do uworld. They're supposedly up to date. I've been trying to update the deck whenever I find out, if there's changes in drug recommendations or things like that. Another person's asking, did I do every single card in Zanki? I didn't. There's probably 3,000 or 4,000 cards I didn't, because I felt like they were low yield. They were easier for me. Yeah. Another person's asking, do I have recommendations on incorporating amboss before dedicated? Yes. So I started amboss the very beginning of my M2 year, and I was doing 20 or 30 practice questions a day on all topics that I'd covered that up to that point. And then, so when we finished the next block, I would include all of those in there too. And I tried to finish amboss. I did the math so that I'd finish it just before when I wanted to start. So I started uworld 4 weeks before my dedicated started, mostly because I wanted to go on a big vacation, and now I don't get to go on vacation, but at least I was ready to take the test early. So anyway, that's what I would do. Another person's asking, they've only gotten through half of the deck by dedicated. How should you study? This is a question I get all the time from a lot of people. At that point, keep doing flashcards. I actually suspended half the deck and only kept topics that I felt like were easier, or sorry, harder, for things that were harder for me, and I suspended everything else so that I was only doing about 200 flashcards a day and could focus. I was doing 4 uworld blocks because I was trying to get through it really fast. I'm not sure that I would necessarily recommend that many. But I would recommend just doing practice questions and then unsuspend the flashcards based off of what you miss and stuff. But uworld is a good resource to study with. Like I said, I thought amboss and uworld both prepared me well in different ways that were both important. And the test feels like uworld with a few of those NBME style like wild questions in there. How did I calm pre-test nerves is a question that just came up. I was freaking out on Monday night when I found out that I didn't have 2 weeks to study anymore. I had 3 days. I called Forrest. Forrest and I talked for like a half hour or so, trying to talk ourselves into this, saying it was a good idea. And slept on it. Definitely prayed about it to make sure that I felt okay with it. And then the next morning, I basically told myself, if I can hit this score on uworld 2, then I'm going to go ahead and take it. And then, like I said, the day before, don't do anything. Go relax. I went hiking with my wife, and definitely was worth it. Is there a reason why I didn't complete 60% of uworld? Yes, I was planning on finishing at least 80%, but I had to take it early. So that's why. Someone's asking, recommend Kaplan notes and videos. I don't know. I used Kaplan for the MCAT and really liked them. I heard they're good from multiple people that scored well. Did I make an Excel sheet for questions that I missed? No, I didn't. I just made flashcards. And I felt like that was good enough for me, but that's up to you. I did, and this is one thing I'd recommend. Like I said, Forrest and I, the day before the test, we went through the things that we were like, we need to review this. When I was taking practice tests or uworld tests, if I saw an answer option that I didn't understand or something, I would write that down. Or if I saw a concept where I was like for example, collagen synthesis, I was just always fuzzy on that. It's like the easiest thing, and I don't know why it was always hard for me. So I wrote that down and reviewed it the day before. And I would do that, write down a list of things. I can give you an example of some of the things that we went over. I can find it here. So, for example, I went over the type 1 through 4 dyslipidemias. I went over cyclosporin and tacrolimus and sirolimus because for whatever reason, those drugs never stuck. I went over all the glomerulopathies. That was the only Pathoma video that I actually rewatched, and it's just because I could not keep them straight, and it was worth doing that. I did the amboss stuff that I talked about earlier, the ethics, the saline, the lymphatic drainage. I reviewed all of the transfusion reactions and transplant rejections. So just like things like that. I had just written down things where I was like, I need to go review this. And that's what I would recommend that you do. Someone's asking if I'll upload this on YouTube. Yes, I'm planning on uploading this on YouTube. Like, everybody's been asking. I'm also planning on making a little more formally structured video with like what I did to study and what I do differently, because I realize this is me just rambling and answering questions. I'm gonna look at a few more questions here. Oh, here's a good one. General test taking tips. The best advice I got, and I started doing this mindset maybe a week or two before the actual exam, and I felt like it was the most helpful thing. When you are going through a question, read the question first. You could read the first line and then the question. Read the question and the answer so you know what you're looking for. Like, what should I treat? And there's a list of antibiotics. Okay, cool. Now you know you're looking for what you're going to treat with, or maybe it's side effects or whatever. Then read the question and highlight things that you think are pertinent to that topic. You know, like if it's gram positive, cool, you're going to highlight that because you're going to need that information in what antibiotic you're going to choose for the answer. But there's going to be times where you're like, I have no idea. You get to the end of that question, you have no idea. What I taught myself in that point is you need to go back with the mindset of they're telling me this somewhere in this question. They are telling me exactly what the answer is. And some of the sentences are to rule out other options because they may not be that you can just pick one, you know what it is right away, but maybe the patient has COPD and there's a beta blocker that's non-selective. Cool, you can cross that one out. Although I think that type of question won't be in there after June or so. But that's just an example that I've seen in a lot of the uworld questions. So when you go back to that question, approach it from, okay, they're telling me the answer's in here. What are they trying to tell me? And sometimes it helps me to erase my highlights and go back through and re-highlight it to get a better view. But like I said earlier, the best thing you can do to get these questions right is to highlight the right things. If you highlight the correct thing, you will get the answer right. Let's look at a few more questions here. These are great questions you guys are asking. And I'm actually, we're going to do a Patreon exclusive question and answer session, probably in a week or two. You can ask more stuff just about like Anki or med school in general or whatever, if you're interested in that. Let's see. I have no idea how my NBME is predicted because I don't know what my actual score is. My uworld 2 and my NBMEs were all fairly close to each other. My uworld 2 was a tiny bit higher, but my scores kind of went up and down around a kind of a plateau. But because that plateau was in my goal range, I was comfortable with it. How did I approach formulas is a good question. I thought you'd be able to write down all the formulas when you get in there during the tutorial session, and found out at the test center that's not possible. So I actually wrote down my formula sheet that I had memorized at the end of the first block, and I would recommend that. But just write down formulas that you don't know and get a sheet of them. Another one, would you recommend 2 passes of uworld? I mean, if you have like a ton of time, yeah, but no. I would say do amboss and then do uworld. It's better to have different looks on the questions. And like I said, amboss has things that uworld doesn't. So I would do a different question bank. That's just me. And save uworld to be your last one. Yeah, let's see. The longer one. How long to finish the amboss question bank? It just depends on what you do. What I did is I looked at the total number of questions, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to do 40 questions a day divided by 40, and it was this many days. And so then I knew where to start. You could do the same thing the other way around. 4 weeks. Someone is 4 weeks away. What do you wish I'd done differently the month before your exam? I feel like I did pretty good the month before my exam, just focusing on uworld. There were days when I wouldn't take things seriously. I was just like, who cares if I don't get a grade score on this block, as long as I learn from it, right? I would approach all of my questions better if I could go back and do that. I think that it would have been more helpful. Yeah. Let's see. Ooh. Was I doing 4 uworld blocks and amboss every day? No, I was just doing 4 uworld blocks. That was during dedicated every day, and I was doing that Monday through Friday, and then 2 blocks on Saturday. Of course, I only had 2 weeks of dedicated that before I actually took this. But some of those days I was doing a full length NBME. And this last week I actually did a uworld block, then uworld 2, and then I was going to do another uworld block, but we had kind of a crisis happen at the home. So I ended up focusing on that instead and didn't do the last one. But I was like happy and excited that I did get on uworld 2, so I didn't really care. Where did I get my t-shirt? That is a great question. I actually have a link in the bio on Instagram if you want to go buy one of them, with the AnKing's logo. And there's a bunch of other medical t-shirts that my wife designed. So just for fun, if you want to go get one. My favorite skincare routine. As you can tell, I don't do anything. There's a few questions people are asking about, like how much of X, Y, or Z was on the test, and I can't answer those. Sorry, guys. I can't really say anything specific to the test. Plus, I think every test is different. So, like I'm pretty sure Forrest and I had different tests even, and we took it the same day at the same place. So, I've heard from other people, oh, my test was super cardio heavy, or mine was super neuro heavy, and so I think everything's different, and you kind of just need to be ready for just about everything because there's a ton. What do I recommend during M1, M2 summer? Do research and take a break. That's what I would recommend. I kept up on my flashcards, but it was not very many every day. It's like 50 every day, and then I did research. Definitely would do again. So it's good to relax. Let's see, how many unique questions did I do? I finished the RX question bank and the amboss question bank, and I did 60% of uworld. I was planning on finishing that 80+% of it, but didn't get a chance. And I was planning on doing 2 more NBMEs, but didn't get a chance to do those either. Where did I get my mask? Great question. My dad's a dermatologist actually, and I got it from his office. But I know there are a lot of like these fabric-y kind that you can get everywhere. So that's still what I would recommend. I did not use Kaplan. A couple people asking about Kaplan. And I've gotten this question multiple times throughout this. I am going to do a YouTube video summarizing my step 1 study plan. And kind of the whole length of everything, what I would recommend, stuff like that. I'll probably also try and include how I would change that up with things being pass-fail now. Because it'll be a little bit different. I think it's definitely possible to pass. I mean, I was trying to get a good score because I'm interested in dermatology. So I put in a lot more time to this, but it's definitely going to be possible to pass. But a lot of this is going to be built upon when getting to step 2. So I still think it's going to be really important. Did it take long to get into the testing room after breaks? That's a good question. Like I said, there was only like 4 or 5 people in my testing center, which is personally kind of frustrating. I don't love how Prometrics handled this. But it was super easy because there was nobody, although they would only allow 3 people in the lobby at a time. So I had to wait outside until 3 people got checked in to go inside and get checked in. So I started my test a little bit late, and I've heard rumors from other people in the country that are starting their test like 2 hours late. Just as a heads up. But it wasn't bad because there wasn't anybody there. In fact, after like noon, it was just Forrest and I in the testing center. It was just the 2 of us. So, and there's at least 20 seats. So that was kind of frustrating, but nice at the same time. Is there anything the AnKing's deck didn't prepare me well enough for? Honestly, I don't think so. But that is given that you've been doing practice questions. I think the deck alone would not be enough. You need to do practice questions alongside it. And if you do 2 practice banks, I did 3, but if you did 2 plus that deck, I mean, you'd be fine. In terms of passing, you'd be totally fine. But you also got to do Anki correctly. You got to understand how the algorithm works. You got to not just be like passively hitting spacebar. You should actually be quizzing yourself every day. So that's what, yeah, let's see. Will I keep doing the AnKing's deck? I'm going to do the step 2 tags, but not everything else. So I'm down to like 20 or 30 cards a day, which is awesome. So that's what I would do. Somebody asking, should I buy First Aid 2020 or keep the annotated 2019? That's a good question. I had both, and there were some significant changes in First Aid 2020. So it might be worth it if you have a friend or somebody that has one, just being able to look at it. I know there was definitely some, like all of the antibody drugs, they're coming out with new stuff every year, so that's a good thing to stay up to date on. But I mean, the majority of it is the same, and so having your annotated part is going to be nice. What specialty do I want to do? I want to do dermatology is what I'm thinking about right now. And let's see. Rumors that bugs and drugs are being underrepresented these days because of increasing scores from Anki and Sketchy. Can I comment on that? I have no idea, man, because I've never taken step 1 before. I mean, there's bugs and drugs on it. I felt like, I honestly felt like the test just felt like uworld 2. That's what I'd expect. That's kind of what it was like. When I add missed questions to my missed questions section of the relevant cards, how do you make sure that you study those cards again within your entire deck? That's a good question. I tagged all of those cards with a missed questions tag and then created a filtered deck to pull all of those cards into its own like missed questions deck. That way I could extra focus on those cards. And I usually restarted them, or at least sent them like earlier. So I'm going to be working on those videos. I'm actually going to be working on a lot of videos coming up soon because I have more free time. So I'm going to work on stuff with the filtered decks, how to handle missed questions, how to change your settings before your exam, bunch of other really cool ideas. I'm going to release all of them on Patreon first, and then I'll release them all public. Everything will get public just as a thank you to people that are supporting us. But yeah, definitely planning on making a lot of fun videos and stuff. Let's see. Do I wish I had done Zanki differently, like with my lectures? Nope. I don't regret at all how I did it. I loved learning from the secondary resources. I used lecture kind of as a review. I did watch most of our lectures. So I definitely would keep doing it the same way that I did it. Most challenging part of taking the exam for me? That's a really good question. This is for me personally, but if I have a hard question and it's the first question, or say I mark 5 in the first 10, I freak out. And then I do poorly the rest of it. And on the actual test, I marked the first question of almost every block. I have no idea why that happened, but it was painful. But I had to practice almost telling myself, like, if you can't figure this out right now, just flag it and come back to it. And that really helped me. And then I also flagged everything that I didn't know or felt sort of unsure on, but I marked the ones that I like definitely didn't know separately on my scratch paper, and I went back to those first because a lot of times having a second look at it, I'd be like, oh, that was like way easier than I thought, and that happened on the real exam. And then I went back to those 50-50 ones, and so that was kind of how like I marked things, just my pattern. What am I gonna do today to celebrate and relax? That's a great question. So last night I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I went to Taiwan. So I lived there for 2 years and like fell in love with the food. It's awesome. And so that's what we did last night. We went to a Taiwanese restaurant here in town that was just awesome. How do breaks work during the test? That's a good question. So you get 15 minutes of the tutorial when you start. And that can be your break if you skip the tutorial, which I would strongly recommend. Take the free 120 like the week before. Do the tutorial. That's exactly how it works. It's actually kind of weird. You can't right click to cross out an answer. You have to highlight it. That was something I learned. So do the free 120 tutorial because it's exactly the same as the actual test. And then on the actual test, skip it, and then you get an extra 15 minutes. So you get 60 hours total. So what I originally planned for was 5-minute breaks in between every block, and then a 30-minute lunch break. I actually ended up finishing most of the blocks 2 to 5 minutes early, and if you end a block early, that adds to your break time. So I actually had like 20 minutes, 30 minutes of break time left at the end, and I finished a little early, but that's how the breaks work. Was RX worth it? I don't know if I would say if it actually was worth it. if I could go back, I probably would have started with amboss, because I feel like they teach you how to take the questions and then maybe do kaplan and then uworld. But then again, with it going past fail, I think honestly you could do amboss and uworld and be totally fine. So that's probably what I would recommend. What I did with RX is at the end of each of our units, I did RX the week of our final. So when we had our cardio, respiratory, renal unit, I did all cardio, renal, respiratory questions the week before our final. And that's what I did with RX. Whereas amboss, I was doing daily as a review of everything we'd covered so far. And then I started uworld and did uworld for about 5-6 weeks. Let's see. How did I study for neuro? I'm a neuroscience major, so I'm not a great, yeah, a lot of it was really easy for me because that was my major, so can't help with that one very much, but mostly the same as I was studying everything else. When did I start reviewing all the material? I didn't review anything because I've been doing Anki. So my method of reviewing was doing flashcards every day and doing practice questions, and that is definitely what I would recommend if you want a really good score. Anki was totally worth it, 100% worth it. They probably could have done a little bit less cards, but it was definitely worth it. Anki and practice questions are all you need. That is definitely the best thing. Let's see. Somebody's talking about how I have asthma with the mask. That's a good question. When I was doing the practice questions here at home, I practiced with a mask, and I would definitely recommend that. And yes, I had a mask that looped around my ears and kind of went like this, tight underneath. And I felt like it was really frustrating, and I couldn't breathe very well. That's why on the actual test day, I put the mask on here and made this really loose so that I could breathe. And you notice when I'm breathing, you can't really see it go in and out, whereas when I have it like this, you can see it move. And so that's what I would recommend. Get something that it's gonna, I mean, you can tie a bandana around your face if you want, but something that's gonna allow the air to come out here so that you're not breathing in stuff the whole time. That was definitely important. Did I memorize lab values? I memorized the lab values that I felt come up a lot. And there's a USMLE lab values Anki deck. Just search exactly that, USMLE lab values Anki deck on Google, and you'll find it. I did that, and then I memorized the stuff that I felt like come up a lot, but not all of them. And I did check on stuff that I needed to. Let's see. Oh, somebody says they love me. Thank you. Well, but seriously, thank you for all of you. I'm actually surprised. There's over 200 people on here. It's shocking, but who do I play in Smash Bros? I am a Pikachu main in Smash Bros, and you are all more than welcome to join me and play Smash Bros Ultimate if you want. Forrest and I will be playing much. We'll be playing a lot. A lot of you are asking about the new drug changes in step 1. I don't really know. I mean, you can go online and read them. They weren't applicable to me. But it sounds like they're taking away a lot of the side effects. They're not doing drug-drug interaction. It'll be more like they'll list side effects and be like, what drug were they treated with? And they're not going to give you a patient with COPD and make you try to rule out the beta blocker because of that. Like, it's what it sounds like, at least. How did I review uworld? That's a good question. So this is not what I would recommend for everybody. I want to make sure that's a point here. I was already pretty close to my goal score, and at that point I was trying to catch as many of the things that had fallen through the cracks. And so if I got something right, I just scrolled to the bottom, read the key question, and moved on. And then when I got something wrong, I really reviewed that topic. That worked for me because I was close. If you're not there, you're using uworld as like a first pass or something, you're going to want to go through each of the wrong answers and be like, this is why this was this is why this was this. That definitely helped me on test day. There was a couple times where I was like, I think this is the answer. But then when I was reading through other answers, I was like, well, wait, this is definitely Parkinson's disease on this answer choice. That's what they're describing, but the question is not describing somebody with Parkinson's disease, so it's not going to be this one. And having the ability to do that, to recognize like what they're trying to say, is really important. So that definitely would recommend looking at the wrong answer choices if it's kind of your first go through or you're trying to improve a lot. Let's see. How was my timing on the test? I finished each block with about 2 to 5 minutes left. I usually had 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'd go back and review all my hard stuff, and then I'd have 2 to 5 minutes left on every block. Did I use Boards and Beyond? Yes, I did. I loved it. I used it for physiology. It's not totally my favorite. I think it's kind of dry sometimes, but Pathoma for pathology, absolutely. I actually liked a lot of the Physeo stuff. I started using them towards the end, and I wish I'd used them more. So I would recommend them. And their videos are free, which is awesome. They're actually University of Utah 4th years right now, I believe. And I know them, chat with them. They're super cool. So yeah, they're great. You can also get their premium thing that has Anki cards, and we've got a discount code for that if you want that. I probably would recommend Physeo if I could go back. I think I probably would do theirs over Boards and Beyond, but I started with Boards and Beyond, so that's where I was comfortable. How much time did I spend with lecture specific versus just board resources? I would start with the board resources, and then like Thursday, Friday, I would watch all the lectures to kind of review those topics. So I did both, but I did primarily the that stuff. All right, let's see. I'm gonna look through these other questions here, see if there's anything good. Man, you guys are asking tons of awesome questions. How long did I study for it? I mean, I started studying for step 1 like day 1 of med school, so 2 years. But mostly through Anki. The heavy part of my study was all my M2 year. So ever since about August is when I've been really digging in. And let's see. I think I've answered pretty much all the rest of these questions, which is awesome. So yeah, let me look through my list of other things I thought that I maybe could share with you, just post step 1 thoughts. How I felt like it versus what I expected. I felt like the test was actually what I expected. Wasn't worse, wasn't better. I mean, I expected some questions to be out in left field, and I would have no idea. There were definitely those types of questions, but there wasn't a ton of them. I expected there to be a couple questions that were super easy, like what's the mechanism of action of this drug? There are questions like that. So, I mean, it's just like doing the practice questions when you're doing, when you're just doing like uworld and stuff. It's what it feels like. It's pretty representative. I think I talked about everything else that I wanted to. And a lot of these questions that are coming in have already kind of been answered. So I am going to post this live to the story. And then if I can, I'm going to also try and share it on YouTube for people that aren't watching and that don't have an Instagram. So that's what I would do. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about the statistics specifically with the NBMEs, but I would recommend doing, and I'm going to make a video more specifically on this, do 23 first because it supposedly is quite a bit harder, then 20. And then I did 18, uworld 1, 21. I was then going to do 22, 24, and then uworld 2 and free 20. I skipped 22 and 24. So that's kind of the order that I would recommend. Anyways, but about 45 minutes. So I'm going to go hang out with my wife, but thanks everybody for joining in. If you want more specific help, that's what we set up the Patreon for. It's also got any add-ons that I've been working on, like the new Pomodoro timer I put up there. There's a beta, and some other fun stuff like that. I'll release videos early on there, and then I'll release them publicly. Going to be working on a lot more videos, and we're going to have a new, So we're going to have lots of fun stuff on that Patreon. And then I'm going to try and work on the deck. We'll get the version 7 out pretty soon. And then, we've got lots coming. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks for learning with the AnKing. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here, as well as follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Patreon. That is at AnKingMed. Also, feel free to reach out via email or check out our website, ankingmed.com, for more tips and tricks.